just read an article by Tom Luton talking about pro-meds or anti-meds and stuff like that. And he says he's never really taken a position on it, but that he'd rather have bipolar in order with meds than bipolar disorder. And I've been back and forth about pro-meds or no meds or whatever. And I currently take meds, and I'm pretty much okay with that, though I do somewhat aspire to not need them. But if I feel like my issue in life is that I have bipolar disorder, I'm always going to need meds. Whereas if I take meds knowing that there's some other issue I want to work on, I feel like the process of bipolar has tried to connect me with my cause and my altruism. And part of my trouble is that I haven't connected with that. So bipolar shows us the power of our brain, connects us with what we're here to do in a way, and I connected with homelessness and women's issues. And then the energy wore out, and then I was perceived as having mental illness. So my passion and my altruism put me in a place where I was perceived as having a mental illness. So my personal problem with some of the issues in the world and wanting to do something about it was turned into my personal problem with a mental illness. So what I'm trying to say is, I feel like it's possible that a lot of us who go through the bipolar process connect with our altruism, connect with our mission and what we're here to do. We get that download, we get that vision. And part of the trouble is we actually need to work together on that, not just work together on our bipolar disorder. So I would say bipolar in order for what? Not just to have bipolar in order. Not just to have bipolar in order to appease society. We were attempting to get in contact with our creatively maladjusted brains, and then we were labeled as mentally ill in order to fit back into the slots of society, slotted into having a mental illness. So I agree that it's fine to take meds, and I'm seeing that in a way they're good modulators of consciousness, especially when you can find ones that do work to slow things down in terms of realizing that we actually have powerful, gifted brains, and we need to take poisons in order to slow them down to the rate of perception of the consensus. So it's great to be able to learn how to manage the intensity of things, and part of the intensity is seeing the intensity of the world. We can see and feel the intensity of the world. It's not just about us feeling intense. There are intense things out there, and we're feeling them, whether far or near, past, present, or future, because all time is now. It's a quantum hologram. And our brains process in that way. They don't process based on me and my little ego and thinking about this and that and what I want for dinner. No, they're thinking in much larger and vaster ways. And we need to talk to each other about these things in different ways, not just about our mental illnesses. So again, it's not just about let's talk, it's let's talk about what? Not just managing our own lives, but how are we going to create a better world? And the medication gives us time enough to try and figure out how to do that. If there's any gift in the medication from society, it's thanks for slowing me down so I can figure out a way for you guys to catch up to us. Not that something's wrong with us in society. It's the other way around. They just don't see that. We're doing them a favor by letting them poison us in this way. So if we can manage to slow our perceptions to smile and nod, then that's a good thing. But in the meantime, we have to figure out how to create a world where people don't have to have this form of distress. You know, if you talk to anybody who has a mental illness diagnosis and you really talk to them, you'll probably find out that they've been through some pretty traumatic stuff. So is it really a mental illness, or is it being traumatized by society? And the thing is, the oxytocin and the love and the connection and those biochemicals, since we get so traumatized in our body, as a last resort, those things get released for us to perceive the world and be in the world and move through the world as if it's so loving and wonderful, in order to save us from ending our lives. And seeing also what's possible, so then when we do come back down to the resonance of society, we can help everyone move into what's possible if we have love in our hearts. It's about sharing what we saw and the vision that we had, and that anybody can see that way and be that way. So it could be bipolar in order to be love, be loving, be kind. And again, I've said, kill them with kindness. If we as bipolars can be so kind to normal people, that would break the stigma. And it could actually be our job to heal them. They think they're trying to heal us. We might be here to heal them, because we have seen that other world that is here now that they can't see and experience, that we have to stay at this level in order to keep the world unfolding at the slow pace that it is. People being able to see with love in their hearts would unfold a different world. We're actually here to teach other people how to see. Maybe we need to learn how to have bipolar in order, but other people need to learn how to see. So this whole bipolar in order thing could be great, to be able to really be with all those intensities and things, but it's not the root cause resolution. Only if it's bipolar in order to show normal people a different order, a world based on the order of love. And it's even harder for us because we're so perceptive that we can see what other people are feeling and thinking, and it doesn't feel good. How can we transmute that? And the even more traumatized and sensitive beings, the homeless people, are completely crippled. They can't even practice being in order at all because they're just stuck. They're crippled by all of this. And by being crippled by all of this pain in the world, they symbolize humanity waiting for that unconditional love to come and resolve that pain. It's not like we don't have the manpower and resources to do that. We just don't have the vision, and we don't have the hearts. So again, I feel like bipolar is not a problem. It's a solution for humanity. It's about learning how to see. And it's not just about acting in order of society and based on society's rules, because those fake rules, those false structures, those structures of the mind are the things that are driving us nuts. Those are not the innate wavelengths of the heart. It's not the spectrum of light that the heart sees. When the heart is seeing and oxytocin infuses our retinas, we see a different world. But when it beats in fear and we're releasing cortisol and we're thinking dopamine thoughts to try and give ourselves pleasure in order to appease ourselves, we can't really see. Oxytocin blocks fear and anxiety. And we're all living in fear and anxiety, meaning we don't have oxytocin. We're not feeling connected. And if we have the oxytocin, we don't have fear and anxiety, we can see a different world. And when we can see a different world, we can unfold a different world. We need these meds because we don't have oxytocin. We're full of stress, we're full of fear, anxiety, and then we're given these poisons to try to make that go away. And people who go into manic consciousness, they get so much oxytocin. And I read in the oxytocin article on Wiki is that when somebody has oxytocin, if they're given oxytocin, they're very hypersensitive to social stimuli, and it increases the approach avoidance reflex. So one will approach appropriate stimuli and also avoid more so. So one might actually seem more reactive, might actually seem a little bit more unstable because they approach things kind of like, oh wow, and then if something happens, they're gone because they can sense it. To me, that seems like pattern recognition. It's a bodily reaction. So with oxytocin in the body, we're strong, and our nervous system actually fully responds to the moment and knows what to do. So that seems like a bad thing in a way, but it's actually being more perceptive, more sensitive, and more protected. So love, being connected, is actually protective because one knows when to get out of dodge. And it even said that a person with the extra oxytocin will react to previously fearful stimuli more strongly. So I had a terrible situation, and then I had all this oxytocin and manic consciousness at a later point. And since then, I'm very sensitive to certain situations where I walked into the back of a tattoo shop with somebody and I just was immediately like, get me out of here. Like, this feels like a possible rape and torture scenario. And I was so terrified. And it wasn't logical, but it was sort of a protection. Like, okay, I'm not going to spend another second in this room. And not that anything was going to happen or would have happened or has ever happened in that room, but me as a woman read that situation as, get out of here. So it becomes protective. When you can read the positive social, you can actually read the patterns of negativity. But what I see this as too is that somebody who goes into manic consciousness, it has something to do with oxytocin. Oxytocin, lovely things happening, synchronicity, following the social cues and the social contagion and wonderfulness. But then, eventually, we're going to run into things that are not good. And the whole being will react to it. And then when we start reacting based on fear, well, now we start going down into, in my case, psychosis. Lots of people have different cycles of how it happens. What I'm saying is the oxytocin as love is protective. It can also, in a way, turn to fear, but it's not really fear. It's actually the intelligence of self-protection, protecting the body from the social situations that aren't good, because it would be a ridiculous notion to think that one is infinitely safe. In a way, maybe the oxytocin can protect us from those who would wish to do us harm. Oxytocin also increases generosity. Now, society wouldn't want that. Wouldn't want people going around being kind and generous to each other. That would just be awful. So in a way, it increases selflessness. We're not thinking so much about ourselves. And then when we're generous, we actually get more oxytocin, and it reinforces that. And there are studies that say people feel better about buying things for other people than themselves. I feel the meds really work by poisoning our vision. And that's the thing too with oxytocin. If we have that love vision and we're in manic consciousness, we're not just seeing that way for ourselves. So we might see a fearful situation for ourselves and retract, but we're also reading the pattern of society. And so the oxytocin, the love in manic consciousness, it wears out in part because we get crushed by our own perceptions. So being hyper perceptive and seeing the positive social cues, we're also seeing the negative. You can't not see it, and then it eventually crushes us, and then we retreat in fear. And with this oxytocin consciousness and this oxytocin vision, we actually become afraid of the world and afraid of society, because it is a fearful and traumatic place. It's based on different principles than the ones that we get connected with when we go into map consciousness, manic consciousness, perceiving holistically in this way. And so in a way, we're a hypersensitive neurotribe, and society's not designed for us. So part of being bipolar in order or anything would be knowing that we're hyper perceptive, that we can see things we don't even know we're seeing. So if we're reacting to something we don't know why, we don't even know what we're reacting to. We don't know why. So we actually, I've said before, are sort of like the thermometers of society. If you take a person with bipolar consciousness and plop them in a situation and they start running, you know it's not good, even if it looks completely harmless. And I feel that that's what's going on for some of the autistic children too. There's things in the environment that we're not aware of that are traumatic, but are. They're not part of our design as humanity. Just like Temple Grandin walked through the cattle processing plants and could see all these things that were freaking the cattle out, and then made it so they could be led to slaughter. In a way, I feel like people who don't see all the things that bipolar people see don't realize that they're being led to slaughter. And then I went back to the dopamine wiki article again because it's very fascinating. And I said in an earlier video that it seems like dopamine's just in the brain, but I read further in the article and it is outside of the central nervous system. And it says, I just got a phone call, but I was reading this thing on Wiki about dopamine, and it said that outside the central nervous system, dopamine functions primarily as a local chemical messenger. In blood vessels, it inhibits norepinephrine release and acts as a vasodilator. In the kidneys, it increases sodium excretion and urine output. In the pancreas, it reduces insulin production. In the digestive system, it reduces gastrointestinal motility and it protects the intestinal mucosa. And in the immune system, it reduces the activity of lymphocytes, which are immune cells. And pretty much all of those functions are crappy functions. You don't want to have your intestinal motility decreased. It means when you have so much dopamine that your food can't pass through your digestive system properly, perhaps. And in the immune system, it reduces the activity of lymphocytes, which is our immune system. So again, we might be getting some kind of pleasure reward, but we're messing up our digestion and messing up our immune system and dehydrating ourselves and producing less insulin. So this dopamine stuff is really bad. Yet we're so dependent on it. And when Dr. David Hawkins says surrender the juice that you get from taking a positionality, which is the pleasure of having a certain opinion or judgment or perspective, which is the pleasure of dividing ourselves from something else and then seeing ourselves as better, or judging someone else to bring ourselves up, we actually destroy ourselves. So the juice is what destroys us, and if we surrender that, that is the eyes of non-judgment, of unconditional love.